our public relations podcast where we talk about real things and real terms and what we say behind the scenes. So today with me, I have Ashley Pontius and Elizabeth Domenech, both PR pros. And we're talking today about crisis planning, right? The topic that I think is a lot like life insurance, where everyone needs it, but no one really wants to talk about it. It's not a fun topic, but it is something that's really important and that we deal with all the time. So I think what our purpose of this conversation is to demystify it and really show how approachable it is, because I think that it looks like a very cumbersome, laborious thing. Oh my gosh, how am I going to even do this? So we're going to break it down. I'm going to start with Ashley. So Ashley, I know, and both Elizabeth, we're both currently, we've worked with crises. But we're currently working on a plan. So that's kind of why it's very top of mind. But Ashley, what are some of your thoughts about crisis planning? What do you see?
I think the biggest thing, like you just touched on, is having one. First of all, I think can sound very scary and cumbersome to a lot of clients and like something that's going to take a ton of time. But really, it's about having that plan in place for if something does happen, whether it's a cyber breach or an disgruntled employee, or anything like that, having a plan already in place with the people who are going to be involved with responding, people that need to be notified about what's going on, and then having, the steps that are going to be taken, whether it's posting on social media and responding, or simply monitoring social media and incoming communications to see if anything's being said, all the way to if you are getting media interview requests or need to respond to the media, or you want to be proactive potentially and put a statement out yourself. It's having that plan in place in advance so you're not scrambling. And then really having it organized and laid out. And it can be as simple as, 2 or 3 pages really of something put together so you have those steps in place.
Mm-hmm.
I would also add to what Ashley just mentioned. Obviously, you need a plan, but also don't wait to get a public relations firm when you have a crisis. It's always good to have a public relations firm in file so you can work it through and go through that plan together easily and quicker than just being like, oh, I have a crisis, let me contact different agencies to get quotes and get something in place together. So that's not like the right course of action, really.
Really good point, actually, too, that recently I saw that somebody talking with a few different agencies because they had about like 5 different crises happening, and it was really tough, I think, to facilitate getting quotes while you're in it, and having those relationships established, I think, is really important prior. I look at hurricanes and crises kind of similar in a way that preparation is key. So if you're not prepared for a hurricane, that's, not ideal. Same thing for a crisis, not ideal. So I see that both of your points too, of like what it takes and how to be prepared is just really critical. I want to touch on something that Ashley, you said about types of crises. So I think that's something that I see from the get-go is many people don't take into consideration the types of crises that could happen. They just think it's going to be like the salacious kind, but it's not always the salacious kind. It could be natural event, weather, could be just your systems are down for days. It could be a cyber breach. It could be even just, I think, as minor, which is not that minor, but I would say benign as a leadership change, in my opinion, is a crisis, because you want to really assure your stakeholders that things are smooth. So there are so many different crises that I think that people only think, I only need a plan if that really salacious one happens. But what are your thoughts? Maybe I'll start with Elizabeth this time. What are your thoughts on having that plan for numerous different types of things?
No, I think preparedness is key, obviously, and like you said, it could be something simple as a change in leadership, but if you don't communicate correctly and quickly with your employees, even, it could cause a crisis that you were not prepared for. So it's about having the plan, going through it, and not just have a plan to have it. You also need to have a plan and go through it occasionally. Make sure that things are still good, that you have scripted messages. Maybe, let's say it's not an employee that goes disgruntled, it's something else, like a natural disaster. Do you have the appropriate messaging for your employees? Let's say you are in finances. Do you have the appropriate message for your customer service employees to give out to the public? Do you have the appropriate message for your communities, your stakeholders, even your board of directors? There's it's not only about media, it's also about everyone that's involved with you. So you need to have appropriate messages for media, appropriate messages for your employees, appropriate messages for other stakeholders.
Mhm. I think what was a really interesting point that I'm pulling from that made me start to think, it's also naming who will be involved in the crisis
Mhm.
response. So Ashley, I'd love for you to elaborate maybe a little bit more on that. How do people do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of your plan, that's really the first part. You want to have everything laid out about who needs to know about it, and what's going on and who should be updated, but also what their roles are. So everyone from your C-suite and your CEO who, depending on their involvement with media and other people, they might just be someone who's staying informed and maybe they're informing the board, all the way down to your legal team and then your social media management team, because they're probably going to be the people who are monitoring if things are coming in. They're responsible for getting that messaging out there. And then Elizabeth made a great point too, that I think when we think of crisis, a lot of times it's outside communications and what you're telling the public, but it's also internal. So if you have a leadership change, if there's something going on, really regardless, you also want to make sure that your internal communications with your own employees and stakeholders and even your board, anyone involved, that you're keeping your messaging on point and also preventing a crisis from either developing or growing.
Yeah, I would add to your point, Ashley, just in that plan, when you're creating one and you're identifying those roles and the persons that are going to be contacted, also remember something as simple as adding their email and their cell phone number, because in a crisis, things can go sideways very quick, and you all of a sudden can't find the contact. So if you have it in the plan, it's easy, it's fast, and everything is there.
So
I wanted
true.
to like just clap for that point because that is so true. It's just having like, here are the 5 key people, here are their emails, cell phone numbers, maybe even a backup or something like that. It's that simple, like to start. It's really, really that simple. Elizabeth and I were recently talking with a beloved healthcare client that when there is a crisis, they have this team, they go into a secure building. And when it's a crisis of like natural weather, things like that, they go into a secure building and they stay there as a team until the event has passed. So they spend the night, they pull these mattresses, they get their, I love how they handled this. Internally, they get their favorite, they ask ahead of time their favorite candy and snacks and things like that. That really helps them kind of stay charged for several long hours and days rather. But the point is, like, they know they're part of that team. There is no confusion of when there is a crisis that they go, oh my goodness, that's happening. Could you be on staff? Could you stay? It's no question. They just know they're part of that team. This is their responsibility, and therefore it's handled really well. So Elizabeth, I just thought that was a fun
That was
client
awesome.
discussion
Yeah,
recently.
it was a great discussion, and it's very effective too. So it was awesome that they have that in place for natural disasters. And it's I know that everything you're saying might seem, after I heard myself saying it, I'm like, we are making it sound like it's a lot, but it's really not a lot. It's about just being prepared and having those people that you know you are going to need for any type of emergency, crisis, anything that might happen.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that. Just bringing it back to the simplicity of it, demystifying this crisis plan. We can certainly, amp it up, and we'll talk. I do want to talk about that in a second, but simplifying is have a Word document, have everybody's contact information like we just talked about. Maybe even have some simple instructions like there will be an email that's sent out. You are expected to be on a meeting within an hour. Like have some simplified instructions. That's all you have to have. You could print it out. You could not print it out. You could just have that in an expectation via email or on your intranet or something like that. It does not have to be complicated. Start there. But we do want to add on the layers that would really help. So I'd like to defer to Ashley about what are some of those layers. We're talking about responses, tailored responses, media preparation, all those fun things.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we first do, we usually have different categories for our clients with the different type of crisis. So however you want to categorize it, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, or green light, yellow light, red light, basically from the most, least serious to the most serious. So the least serious, you might just be, like I said, monitoring social media. Maybe you send an email internally or just to your actual crisis team, letting them know what's going on and what's involved. Medium level, maybe it does require some sort of statement or a press release to the media if it's escalated. And then the third one would, of course, be that's something really terrible has happened and it's all hands on deck and you're responding on social, you're definitely sending your internal communications, and you're probably also doing media interviews. And I know you touched on this, but you definitely want to have those responses in place, written responses, whether it's from the press release to statements you're making to the media, talking points for your stakeholders who are going to be talking to media, so that your messaging is uniform across the board and nobody kind of goes off script or goes rogue or says something that shouldn't be said, especially during a crisis when things can be sensitive. So those are some of the things that we would generally suggest. And then also, of course, having your social media responses that are going to also be uniform to your main messaging.
Mhm. I think too, one thing I've recently seen is an organization reach out after they'd already worked with a crisis firm, that the response was too slow. So what's happening is, just as Ashley was talking about, you have to have like a checklist. It's really just a checklist of we got to do this, this, and this in these categories. But I think what happened with that other agency or firm is they were just starting to build what that checklist was, or they were starting to build the talking points. So my recommendation to really like boil it down, simplify it, is at least have like your staple. Like we always care about people first. We never give confidential information out. We, like have some of your staples in that Word document. I think that'll really help you be like 5 steps ahead. And you're not starting from scratch. However, I'll give the caveat that then you need to customize it. So you can't say there can't be like a canned response that's going to be blanketed out. You have to have certain core elements, and then everything is going to have its unique response. So in that case, what we saw was really unfortunate because the organization was then reaching out to other PR agencies after having a PR agency that was, really working on it, but just not providing anything substantial to review. So you just kind of you can be really ahead of the game with some of those core elements.
I think that takes me to my first point. Don't wait. Don't wait to get a PR firm on your side to when you're having a crisis.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if you wait until a crisis starts to even begin thinking of a plan or even thinking about potential statements for something that might happen, the crisis might be over by the time you even get all of those materials together. So speed is just of the essence whenever you're responding to those things.
Mhm.
I think that's the first due on a crisis,
Yeah.
right? Respond quickly.
Yes. Yes. What do you guys think is, I mean, I feel like I already know the answer. Like, is responding quickly more important? Is accuracy more important? Or is there some kind of combination of both? Or I have an opinion and it might not be the popular one. So I'd love to hear what you guys think.
I think for me is like four key things. It's responding quickly, being transparent, showing empathy for whatever the situation is, and staying consistent. So having everyone giving out the same message and staying consistent in all of your channels of communication as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's a mix. I think speed's important, but you definitely don't want to be giving out inaccurate information either that you then have to go retract. Um, but you certainly, you don't want to get bogged down in the details so much or have so many people reviewing a statement or emails or other things like that, that again, it slows you down. So that goes back to our point of having that plan in place of who's going to be doing what and who reviews what before it goes out, can help you move very quickly.
Mhm. All right, so I'll weigh in on my unpopular vote. So I feel like we see this a lot with law enforcement in particular, where um, and I feel like we've seen it really recently with some national news headlines where you start to get details and about something, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? This wasn't there, and so what we really found was this. And then you start to distrust the
Mhm.
sources or the information. So accuracy is really important, but to me, speed comes first. So you don't want to be on that side of the coin where you're giving like, oh gosh, false kind of stuff. You want to be fast, but I think being fast saying we are collecting the information still.
Mhm.
We are still, I just want to let you guys know our process or where we're at. At least say something that is where you are honestly, transparently, but don't ever speculate and don't ever start to put some pieces together if they are not together yet. But I'd rather have my clients start to say something in general. Um, that's my
Yeah,
viewpoint.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Same here. As
Responsible.
long as you're not speculating or overpromising or blaming other people, but you're saying something positive about you taking charge of the situation, I think it's wonderful.
Mhm. So any last advice that you guys would like to see organizations out there do, that they can do, to help, I guess, prepare for this? I think media training is something too we can touch on, but any other like last core pieces?
Yeah, I think obviously media training is important because you can have a plan, but then you don't have the right people to get the message out there and it could go wrong. But also once you have that plan, you can obviously always update, adjust after a crisis, or even if you don't have a crisis, you can adjust it. But really cool, you can do something really nice, which is you can do mock-up crises and just like put something out there and get your team rolling, thinking about it, doing all the steps so you know you're prepared.
Yeah, I agree. Doing those types of tabletop exercises can be really beneficial, even if it's an hour, 2 hours over lunch, order lunch and get your team together and come up with a mock crisis, come up with a couple of them and how you would respond differently, whether it's to a cyber breach or, if you're a financial institution and somebody's, God forbid, robbed a bank or a credit union. You can run through those scenarios with your employees and the people that are going to be involved on your crisis team and make sure that you really are prepared and answer questions and um, go through problems you encounter along the way.
Mhm. I really love that because I think you don't want your team, if you've got your team, you got your Word document or whatever with their names and emails and things like that. you don't want it to just be there. You know, I would
Mhm.
say that it should be a year-round discussion, maybe quarterly, if that's a good cadence for you, but that you never want somebody to have that like deer in headlights because they haven't thought about it for the full year. They're just, their name's on this document, cool. And they didn't think crisis would arise. It did. Now they're talking to the media or their employees and things like that. And you want them very well prepared and comfortable. And for it to be a routine. I mean, it's never going to be routine, but as routine as possible.
Absolutely.
Well, crises are very sensitive. I feel very positive that most organizations try to do the right thing. Certainly there are some that are not, you know, as transparent or empathetic, but I think most people, organizations, most leaders try to do the right thing and have these pieces roll out the right way. So well, great. Thank you for the great discussion, and we appreciate you tuning in as well, and we hope you check us out for our next episode.